threatening. And sort of a second question would be, did you, as you went through all of this, at any point have sort of a crisis of your spiritual values, of say, this is unfair, this is unjust, how could there be a God in a world like this, or how is it possible, or I've been a dupe, I have been misled by people. You were very forgiving of your mother, for example, on the Santa Claus story. But many people, as they go through their sort of spiritual biography, is one of sort of spiritual crises. And I wonder if you had any of that sort of experience that you could share.
That's a good question. I would say that, and to be very frank, I never had that. I think I was so well supported by my parents, and I give them really all the accolades for doing that. They kept us feeling that we were just okay, we will always be okay, we will survive. And as a teenager, thinking teenager and a thinking adult, I never felt that I had to lose hope, because I always saw there was another goal. I saw the good side. I felt that I would come out of that. So I was very frankly, maybe my husband can tell me that, but I don't think I ever had a crisis of belief or spiritual. And then I went from different places, but in every place I felt so supported by whatever community that I was in, that I could always glean from one to another. If I didn't have that, I would move on to something else. So,
I have a question about the early part of your story and your father and some of your grandparents. Clearly there were a number of people who had lost touch with the day-to-day exercise of their religion, the practice of the religion. Did they ever talk about why or how that came about, why they were removed from practicing their faith?
Well, it's a very good question, because in Europe, not like in the United States, religion is not that important. So if you're not a practicing person, you don't go to church, it's nothing. I think in the United States, often people say, well, I went to church, I went to the synagogue, I went this, I belong this, I went to this conference. I don't recall that as being something that was important at that time. And I mean, that when I was a teenager, I noticed that everybody was busy doing their things. I was a Girl Scout, for example, but that was a secular activity. So that was the only activity that I did outside of the school. And, oh yes, I played the piano, I played the viola. So there were things that we had to do that kept us our mind away from worrying about that. Yes?
To build on our friend's question about change and how difficult it is sometimes for any of us to embrace change, you clearly sound like a change agent. And you've talked about academic change and community change and international change. Do you ever get into the political realm or sphere?
Yes, I do. I didn't fit into the spiritual life, but yes, I'm always very interested. And earlier, I was certainly much more adamant and much more active in politics. I attend, and now all the meetings, if we have a new person running, I wanted to understand what's happened. But the latest thing, and probably some of you are a member of the Move On, I have signed more petitions than you can believe it. They constantly ask us, but I find out that it really works. So I take the time, and I'm very interested in issues like the gun control, the sex, equality of sex, and many issues. So yes, I'm involved, but not. I don't go to rallies anymore. I just when I was younger. But I'm very cautious of that. And then something that I didn't mention, but my parents decided they really want to come to the United States for many reasons. One of them is they like the separation of religion and state, because in Belgium, anything, it's really 95% Catholics. And so the state is run by the church. And so that's one of the things I'm extremely conscious of it, and I feel the same way here. And whenever there's an issue where I can help and write a petition for that particular issue, I'm really very interested in. And also, for example, I got to know, we all know Chris Van Hollen. It's true, he's a Swarthmorean, but he knows me by name because every time there's some place I could go and talk to him, even when I call his office, because I often call there, either Carden or Minkowski, but with Chris I could say, well, I'm a constituent, but I know what Chris is going to vote, but I want to make sure that my vote is registered. So yes, I'm active in the little way that I can do. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Hartman. And Franz, I just want to know about, I had breast cancer, and it has affected my life in a spiritual way. So maybe someday I should sit down and write all that out. And I was just wondering if you have had any kind of change in the way you think about the world, or about spirituality or God, or anything at all, with the possibility of, you know, what could be an outcome of having such an illness, because I think you had one. This is something I'm living with now, and probably why I decided to become a member. So I'm just wondering about you, and how it had if it had any kind of screeching stop on your way of doing everything in the world.
No, I didn't at all, but I call myself lucky. I have a gynecologist who said that even though I had passed 75, he still wanted me to do a mammogram, and I had the mammogram, and there was some things that were suspicious, so I had to have a biopsy, and after the biopsy it was obvious that there was something called carcinoma inside it, which I was told is not a very dangerous one. And then I had choice. I had choice to do chemo or have the breast removed, and Dean and I talked about it, and one day I came before I got the results, and do you mind if you're going to have a wife with one breast? He said, absolutely not. Well, that was the decision, and I've been free of cancer for 3 years, and I never felt, yes, I feel that I'm a very healthy person, and I kind of said, oh, why did it happen to me? Well, you turn around and you see how many other women have it. And especially I eat properly, but I breathe, I drink the water, so there's something I cannot avoid. But it never really, I never lost faith in anything. I just said, it's happening to me, deal with it, and move on. And, but I'm again lucky. A friend of mine just found, she's 84, and she is at the Y every day as well, but she swims every day and she does exercise every day. Now I only do either or. And she had a pain in the side, and she discovered that she has lung cancer and cancer of the bones. But this woman said, whoop, I've lived I'm 84 years old and I've been healthy. So I'll do one thing at a time. I'll slow down, I'll only do one thing at a time. And for all of us at the Y, we just say, boom, wonderful. That's what we all should do.
I need to get back to the Y on member day.
It's a fantastic supportive group.
Thank you.
And I know that some of you may have helped me, but when you're not supposed to lift your arm when you get an operation like that. So I figured I need to have somebody to help me get dressed for the first 10 days. So a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine at Y, organized a team that every single day for 2 weeks, I had someone who came at about 11 o'clock, helped me to get dressed, had lunch with us, brought dinner, and by the time I went to the doctor and he said, lift your arm, and I said, like this, he said, ah. So, you know, I saw this as a challenge, that I had to do something to make myself well again and move on.
Thank you.
Hope you feel the same way.
I'm working on it. Thank you.
Yes?
I was intrigued by your thought about the spiritual crisis, And it strikes me that growing up with parents who were liberal in their orientation probably avoids crisis. And I think that many people who go through a spiritual crisis have maybe been indoctrinated with a more fundamentalist religion. By the time I was in second grade, I could recite my catechism. I believe in God the Father Almighty. I mean, I can still go through the Apostles' Creed. And so coming to an individual religion, or the concept of finding your own way to God, is really alien to a lot of orthodox religions, and promoting of the crisis at some point, where you really are breaking away from the way you've been conditioned from very early childhood to a whole new concept of what the universe is about and what your place is in it.
Well, thank you for saying that. I had something like this, and we removed it because of the time. But I had said that I was very lucky not to have a religion that I had to break down. Although I remember when I started Swarthmore, I said, well, everything that I believed in the past, I'm going to break it down to rebuild. But I did not have the guilt feeling of not believing what I was told was the thing to do. That's why, to me, Quakerism just entered my life at the right time, because it was, I wanted to believe in something. I mean, I'm certainly not agnostic, and I feel that it is very much of a support, but I have to try to find my way of explaining the world. And that's, so, thank you, because I'll add it back. Yes.
Franz?
Yes.
I'd be interested in your telling us just a little bit more about the period after you left the Cevennes and went back to Belgium and before you came to the United States. That was such a turbulent time, and the war itself had been so terrible. And I've been influenced in recent weeks by reading several books by Jews about the Holocaust. And it's picking up Michael's theme about a spiritual crisis. I mean, how did you and your family understand what had happened and what should be done? And did it shake your sense about pacifism and conscientious objection? I mean, very sort of, and just it'd be interesting to hear you say a little bit more about that period in your life, and whether that was a crisis for your family and you, and how it entered into your decisions.
Yeah, I'm sure that entered the decision of the parents. At that time, and it's different from what families do now, we were not consulted. We were told we're leaving. But then I heard them talking about the fact that they felt that staying in Europe was not a good thing, because they didn't see the future of Europe. They did not see that Germany will pick up. Remember, that was in 1945, 46, and we left in 1950. So not much had happened for Germany, but they were still fearful that there would be prejudice for Jews, which, I mean, for Jews, we are not practicing Jews, but still people who had the origin of Judaism may be more in danger than in the United States, where it was a country of freedom and a country where people can express themselves. I think my father, during his travel, was, as a young man in the early 30s, realized that this country had much more to give than Europe had at that time. So, does that give you?
Yeah. Did your family ever discuss the possibility of going to Palestine? Was that ever? It was
absolutely removed completely from. I mean, I never heard them decide that. In the late 30s, my parents were trying to go to England because my mother and my aunt were British citizens, but England wouldn't accept their husband, so they said, well, then we stick together, and we can't do that. We looked at Argentina, we looked at many different places, but I never heard them saying Palestine. At one point also, the word was Switzerland would take some of the children. So I remember some discussion about sending the 4 of us to Switzerland during the war. And again, the parents decided not to do that. And it was very wise because many convoy of Jewish kids were caught by the Germans. So I think I never heard them talking about Palestine. And at this point, for me, well, that's another whole topic, but I'm glad that they're there, but I think what the Jewish state is doing to the Palestinian is just as bad as what they had received, and that makes me feel angry. And so that's why I love to buy the Palestinian oil. It's the only thing I can do. Okay.
Yeah, Franz, this is going to sound weird, but because I understand your family wasn't identifying as Jewish. I grew up in Philadelphia. I'm probably 10 years younger than you, and my family was so anti-Semitic. Philadelphia was so divided between where Jews lived and where other people lived. Were you aware of that, or maybe you didn't speak English, so you didn't get that?
Oh, no. We were very aware, and my parents kind of saw these Jewish people who were in one part of the area to not be really the type of Jews that we were. And really, it was the case. We lived in the main line.
Right.
My parents showed us a good place to be brought up.
Yeah, I know. It's just like.
So I never had that contact with this type of Jewish people.
So some of
but
it's
we
class,
knew
because
about
you clearly, when you have diamonds, you came from a different class of family. No, I mean that. I mean, it makes a big difference. Class is there too, you know.
it. I remember my aunt, because by the time my mother had died, but my aunt making, not fun, but derogatory remarks about the Jews over there, which we had nothing to do with. And I went in a high school that was very much mainliners. But I remember the segregation with black students. I never met a black student until I went to Swarthmore, and I'd been in the country for a year and a half. And
Same. I grew up at Elkwood Park, you know. It's same thing.
yeah, but I remember that there were 4 of them, and they were just like, to me, they were not different except the color of the skin. But I had not had this 16 years or 18 years of prejudice that was around me. So when we went for my 50th reunion, actually one of them came and said, I remember how nice you were with me, and thank you so much. Well, I was nice to everybody, but for her, it looked like I was taking her as an equal rather than as the black person.
See, I think your family really didn't tell people that they had Jewish ancestors.
That's right, yeah.
So
They
they kept it quiet
They kept it very quiet.
because of their experiences in Europe.
I think they got so badly burned that we laughed because I certainly told my husband that I was of Jewish origin. My sister did not, and she married an old Quaker person, and we talked about the war sometimes at the dinner table. I got a big kick under the table because she had not told her husband. So thanks for that.
There's another book right there.
Yeah.
I think we can take one more question and we'll.
Franz, I just want to follow up on what you said about connections to black people, because the Belgians were so horrible in Belgian Congo, and Leopold in particular was just dreadful. How did you avoid getting, I don't know, affected by that in a negative kind of way?
Well, again, do you remember I was a teenager, so I was
Yeah.
there for 6 years, and I remember not liking that, but what I liked is that the picture of all these Congolese in the chocolate bars, so I collected those. So I was very insensitive for what was happening, because at that age you don't get involved in anything, but certainly when I went to the Congo where I was lecturing, I can tell you, I felt terrible. I really did not like it, because I felt guilty, although I was nothing much to do with Belgians. But I realized that what the Congo had suffered from Leopold and all the things that Belgians did made me feel really bad.
Getting nuns, because those diamonds. It was those diamonds.
Yes, that's right, exactly. My grandfather traveled in many places of the world, including India. But I think that the Belgian Congo had really had, I think, 20 college-educated people in 1960 when they became independent. I thought, later on, I was horrified. Here they came and said they give you education, but they really didn't. So I never felt that good about it. That's part of my life or ancestry, whatever you call it.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yes, I would, I will, on behalf of everyone here, thank you deeply for being so open with us and giving us so much fascinating detail about your life, but also for showing us how you grew and how you matured and how you embraced life as you went along. It's very beautiful. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to hearing you do it with the children, as I did it last couple weeks ago. The children will be, there's so many facets in your story for the children in the Sunday school on that third Sunday when they don't. No.
Now that you have
rehearsal, you put rehearsal.
That's right. Yes, thank you. Well, thank you for coming and spending the time with me. But I mentioned this to my cousin, who's now a Christian Scientist. She said, "Oh, that's so personal. How are you going to do this?" It's among my friends. So thank you very, very much.
Let's close with a moment of silence, please.
Soccer already.
I brought my black bag. Didn't leave it in the car, but